Are you hustling endlessly? Don't burn yourself out. I'm going to reiterate something that I've said before in the past, and I'm hoping that over time, some of these raw ideas that I have, I can kind of form them into a framework, a model that can help people see reality in a different light, in a different perspective. So stop hustling, stop endlessly grinding, right? Because if you are looking at your typical principle in physics, right? We know that there are two levers. We can also rewrite this, right? We know we can rewrite the equation in this manner, right? So that we understand that you can increase the the mass of the object to exert a certain force, or you can take a smaller object but just speed up the acceleration to have the required impact. So a lot of times what I do observe in popular culture is just that people are constantly hustling, right? They are grinding, they are overworking, overtime, right? And this will inevitably lead to burnout. Sometimes you might be lucky. Sometimes uh, the amount of work you're putting is enough to create the force, right, that you need to begin to uh, curve reality in the direction that you need it to begin to curve. And really, what this force does is when you start curving reality, that reality curvature starts to bring in uh, probabilistic results, right? So before higher curvature, more higher likelihood that you get the results you're looking for, right? And and really, some people are lucky in that the domain they're operating this in. So this is all domain dependent, right? So some people are lucky in that when they work super hard, they grind effortlessly, just find something and just toil, right? They're lucky that before the burnout starts, they start to see results, right? And some people are unlucky when they start seeing the results, they're already burnt out and they can't maintain or sustain the the identity required to keep this reality curvature. I'll explain more of this in detail in the future, but they can't keep the reality of this curvature. They can't sustain it. And what happens is when the results come in, it quickly fizzles out because the results you get depends on the curvature of reality. Of course, I will explain that. If you haven't seen that in other videos, I'll explain that in future videos in better detail. But the results you desire have a higher likelihood of appearing in when you have a very deep gravity well due to who you are as an individual, right? But if you've just been using speed and acceleration to kind of produce some of those results, well, you have to keep on that level, that pace, in order to continue to see those results, right? And we really want to shift, we want to shift our energy to self improvement, right? Self improvement, that's the mass area. This is what I like to call identity mass. Identity mass. We want to shift our resources, our energy, our mental resources to improving or increasing our identity mass. That way, with this increase, we don't have to do as much work, right? The field we produce, the distortion effect that we create when this happens, when we start working on ourselves, start studying, right? Start sharpening the axe, starting to look for other skills, maybe networking, right? What happens is by virtue of just having more of who we are better able to curve reality without burning out. This is the difference between somebody who is who is working 90 hours and is creating and is creating a curvature in the market domain, in the market domain that is bringing back something equivalent to $25 an hour, right? Versus someone who has a very strong identity mass and they're able to, by virtue of the credibility they've established, for example, are able to command in a single moment 100K, right? And just because their curvature is able to quickly move this amount into their perceived reality. That is it in a nutshell. Now we can expand in any of these directions. You can ask me, what exactly do I mean by identity mass? I'm hoping to explain that in the future, right? You can ask, what do I mean by domains? Well, this is a preview of coming attractions, but you can imagine that reality is like this kind of fabric with an infinite amount of, I don't know if I don't think I drew infinity correctly. How do you draw infinity? Yeah, with an infinite layer of compressed material, and each of those materials represents some domain. For example, fitness, for example, finance, right? And each of those domain maps to a specific feature of your identity, right? So those are some of the ideas. There's a model that I'm creating here to help understand how people perceive and manipulate reality. Because let's be clear, let's be honest, there are people walking on this earth who manipulate reality on a level that you and I have not achieved yet, right? And that's just a matter of who they are and how much effort they've put into themselves. It's not about speed, right? Because as I've said in probably some videos, I don't know if they've been published yet, but as I've said in the past, there's a limitation to just grinding. Why? You remember how this works, right? This is related to velocity, right? And velocity has a time constraint to it, right? So humans are limited by time. You don't have infinite time, so you can't put infinite speed or acceleration to get this moving in your favor, right? But what you can do, now there are arguments, right? There are different ways you can interpret that, right? For the sake of simplicity, I'm going with the fact that you don't want to just hustle, right? You want to make sure you're giving time to build on yourself, to study, to improve, right? Maybe if you're doing content creation, perhaps there's something you can do with the camera work, right? That, for example, that's not my forte, right? For me, my identity moat would be developing this framework a little broader, exploring different ideas, for example. But yours could be just that, right? Improving the camera angle, right? Improving some of the videography to kind of have a better result, a better outcome, right? So, and of course, those all represent different domains, different layers that can be fine-tuned, that can be curved to produce a desired effect, a desired outcome. And I don't want this video to take too long, but let me know if this makes sense to you. And how can you apply this to your life, right? Stop burning out. If you're reaching the point of burnout, there are many reasons why, but for the sake of this model, it means you're not improving yourself enough. You should be producing more value by virtue of who you are, doing very little passively, right? And then the rest can be you continuing. You need to shift your energy more towards, I just need to build myself, work on myself, work on my business, for example, this math that I'm working on, than just working tirelessly. Because remember, you only have a finite amount of time, right? So do not trade time for money, right? We don't want to do this. What do we want to do? We want to trade our value for money, right? We want to trade who we are as an output for money, right? So if we can focus more on execution by virtue of our credibility, our association, our network, you name it, right? Then we can produce. The market can produce value to us, right? The market will respond. It can be latent. There might be latency. It might take time. But the point is, if you move away from mentally, and it can just start mentally. Right? No one's saying quit your day job. Trust me. Don't quit your day job, right? But the point is, you can start to shift your mental model away from, I need to just work harder. Oh, if I just get that high paying job, right, everything will be set. No, you're actually going to keep the mindset of hours, of time. And time is so integral to your identity, right? Because you can spend a lot of time um, um, grinding, or you can spend more of that time building your identity mass. An identity mass means you get to have a bigger, sizable impact for less resource. So it really depends on where you want to put your focus on. This is more temporary. This is more sustained. So I hope this has been helpful. Remember, this is going to be applied to different domains. Let me know what you think about this. I'm hoping to continue to refine some of these raw ideas into something more tangible, right? And really trying to see where this goes. I love this. It's really cerebral, really high thinking, but I really want to distill that into very actionable steps. So remember, don't burn out. Okay. See you in the next video.